You know that Alabama song? The one that says, I'm in a hurry to get things done and I don't know why? Like, that is me every single day. So when it comes to crochet and crochet speed, I try not to be in a hurry on purpose. But you know, every now and then we have a deadline, we have to get a project done. So in this video, I wanted to share a few practical tips that actually help me crochet faster when I want to. Tip number 1, get enough yarn in your lap to reduce friction. Look, a yarn bowl and the yarn dispenser thingies, like those can be great. They work really well for a lot of people. For me personally though, I find them to be kind of clunky and they just don't really work for me. You really can't beat not having any tension or friction or anything pulling on the yarn when you're working with it. So I typically will pull a few yards at a time, let it just rest on my lap, and that way as I'm working with it, there's nothing pulling on that yarn and it makes it so much easier to crochet faster. Tip number 2, time yourself. Now I know this one sounds totally crazy. It's a really fun way to gamify things and it works really well if you have like a slight competitive streak. But even if you don't, if you're like me, I am not competitive at all, but I found this to work really well. I just totally fell into this tip too. I set out to figure out how long a project was going to take from start to finish. And then what I found was that I wanted to see if I could beat the previous row's time. Like, it just totally gamified it for me and made it sort of fun. Now, it's really important though, when you set your timer for the first time, forget that it's there, because if you know that you're timing yourself, you'll crochet faster. And that's why this really off-the-wall trick just totally works. Tip number 3, use stitch markers. You can definitely use stitch markers to help you keep track of large numbers of stitches. You can reduce the amount of time that you spend like physically counting or, you know, what they're intended for, marking stitches and saving you time because you have those stitches marked. But the way I like to use stitch markers is a little more, I don't know, simple. If you know that you have to do a certain thing on a certain side of your project, like the shawl for example, use the stitch marker as the visual cue, and you don't have to think about where you are in the pattern and what you're supposed to do at that point in the pattern. You just see the stitch marker and you say, okay, I know I need to increase. So this tip isn't gonna, you know, save you tons and tons of time. It's not gonna make you crochet a lot faster, but it's surprisingly good at just saving a few seconds. Tip number 4, take frequent breaks. Now I know this one sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out. If you're stressing about crocheting really fast, then you're not going to give your hands and your wrists the break that they actually need, and you could end up with a repetitive stress injury, and that'll put you out for weeks. So in this case, slow and steady does win the race. Make sure you're taking a break at least twice an hour, if not maybe every 15 minutes or so, to give yourself a little bit of a stretch. And yeah, even though it seems like you're going to be adding time to your project, in this case you could be saving yourself a lot of time later. Little critter over there, she's actually really great at reminding me to take breaks, mainly just reminding me to give her gravy constantly, because like that's all she wants in life is just gravy and that blanket to sleep on. So simple. Tip number 5, experiment with how you hold the yarn. Now look, the pinky wrap is great. I swear by the pinky wrap a lot of times. It keeps good tension and good control on your work. But with certain yarns and in certain situations, the pinky wrap will actually slow you down a lot. So in a lot of cases, when I need to crochet really fast, I drop the pinky wrap. And this is especially true if your hands have any moisture on them. For me, I don't put lotion on my hands when I'm about to crochet if I know I need to crochet fast, because that added stickiness will slow things down, especially with that pinky wrap. Like, man, it's like glue. I don't know. And if you have sweaty hands in the summer, if you're working when it's really humid or hot, if you're outside or wherever you are, if you have any moisture on your hands whatsoever, that will just stick to the yarn and makes things a lot slower. Now, if I'm using a bulky weight or a super bulky weight yarn, I definitely drop the pinky wrap because the thicker yarn, it just doesn't flow around my hand the way I need it to. But even when I'm working with medium weight, lightweight, even to some degree, like even thinner yarns, I will drop the pinky wrap if I know I need to crochet faster. Just that added little bit of tension, it slows you down, and that adds up when you're working like thousands of stitches. Now I will say, experiment with this, because when you drop the pinky wrap, you are losing a bit of tension and control, and that can change the way your stitches look overall. They could be maybe a little bit bigger than normal, and that could throw off the gauge in your pattern. So you do need to practice this, but I do think it's worth experimenting with, because the speed at which my stitches happen when I don't have the pinky wrap, like, you just can't overlook this tip. Tip number 6, consider the hook material and the yarn material and how they work together. This tip won't be for everybody, and it won't be right for every situation, but the material of the hook and the material of the yarn, they have a relationship sometimes. Sometimes it's a good one. Sometimes it's not a good one. Your perfect hook is your perfect hook, and if it's a wooden hook or if it's a plastic hook and that's what you like to crochet with, you should crochet with that. You'll be faster because you're more comfortable with it. However, there are certain yarns that will stick a little bit more, have a little bit more drag or grip. Something like a Chanel yarn tends to be really sticky with a hook, and cotton. It's just not my jam. I can't crochet fast with it. It's not like soft on my hands. It's not enjoyable to work with. It makes my fingers sore and dry and like, blech. But sometimes you just have to crochet with cotton. Now I know in a lot of cases you don't really have control over the yarn that you're using, and yeah, like your perfect hook is your perfect hook. But in those situations where you can think about these things, having some harmony between your hook material and your yarn material can go a really long way. Tip number 7, work on a simple pattern that you can memorize. Look, I know this is one of those tips that like everybody talks about, but you know, like there's a reason why everybody suggests this tip. In the situation where you have control over the stitch, the pattern, like all of the stuff that you're using, if you can find ways to simplify it so that you don't have to look at a pattern every couple of seconds, you can really save yourself a ton of time. Taking your eyes off of your work, finding where you are in a pattern, jumping back and forth, like task switching, and the lag that happens, like, is a real thing. Now, if you do have your heart set on a pattern, and maybe it's not a simple stitch pattern, just take the time to memorize repeats at a time. Even just working the first couple of rows, yeah, you might have to look at your pattern a couple of times here and there to help you along the way, but as you do something repetitively, you will start to memorize it over time. And that's the goal, really. Have a pattern that you can memorize, something that's simple, so that you don't have to look back and forth to figure out what you're supposed to do next. You can save a ton of time this way. Now, there are other tips for crocheting faster, like making sure you're using the hook that you're used to crocheting with, pulling from the center of the skein instead of pulling from the outer one and letting it roll all over the place. Or my favorite, just practice. The more you crochet, the faster you'll get. And while that's absolutely true, and so were these other tips, I figured I would give you a couple different practical tips that actually helped me crochet faster when I wanted to, which really isn't that often. We still have a few Crochet is Cool tees in stock at bhooked.com. I appreciate all of the support there. Happy hooking, and I'll see you in the next one. A yarn bowl and the wine. Wow, wine. It's still 10 o'clock. I don't know why I'm thinking about wine.